to the Natural Born Leaders podcast, the place where women's leadership and experiences in organizations take center stage. I'm Shirly Azar, a former senior procurement manager, a lecturer, and mentor for women leaders. In each episode, we dive into the challenges and triumphs that women managers face in the workplace. We share inspiring stories about overcoming gender biases, discuss the complexities of balancing career and motherhood, and explore how maternity leave can serve as an opportunity for career growth. Here you'll find practical tools from senior managers and HR experts who will guide us on how to promote and support women in the workplace. Alongside authentic female experiences, we shed light on what it truly means to navigate organizations with women. Together we are building a community that helps women advance into senior roles and become part of decision-making processes in organizations. And today I have the honor to host on my podcast Shirly, who is the Chief Marketing and Sustainability Officer in Nilit, who has spent over the past 20 years, even more than 20 years, in multiple areas like product design, merchandising, marketing and business leadership for global brands, including Adidas, Reebok, and Gore-Tex. Michelle, good evening. It's
Shirley,
very nice to host you here on my podcast.
thanks, Shirley. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me to do this. I'm very excited about this discussion.
Yes, me too. And we have to say to our audience that Michelle and I had the pleasure of working together. So we've had a few years, I think about 2 or 3 years that we worked in the same company. I have to say Michelle was the the addition to the management that brought finally a woman, a very capable woman, to the
Yay.
management room, which was exciting for me as someone who's a strong advocate for women in the workplace and altogether in general. So let's start, Michelle. I want to start right away with asking you about a moment that I think was really meaningful in your, let's say, journey in life and also in your career. And I remember you told me about the time where you had to move with your family from Canada, where you grew up, to the United States. And I was wondering how this, let's say, sharp transfer met you as a woman, first of all, as a person who has to build its career, and also as a mother, and also as a wife. So how this transformation made you feel? How did it feel for you in all different aspects of your life? Can you share it with us?
Yeah, it's a great question and a big question.
Yeah,
I would
sure.
say that moment in time, and that was probably about 7 years ago now,
Wow.
where we made the decision to move to the US. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, from Canada. I had spent all of my life in Canada. We grew up there, my whole family. I have my twins there as well. So when we made the decision to the US, it wasn't just for work. Um,
Okay.
for me, it meant switching careers or switching companies. But it also meant that we were leaving behind everything we knew, not just from the work side, but all of our family was in Canada. All of our friends were in Canada. So
Wow.
it was a big decision to move to the US. And not to mention from our side, for my husband and I, but also for my twin daughters, who at the time were 15. And you can
Wow.
imagine being a teenager is hard enough, but also moving countries, moving schools, making new friends, trying to figure out life again was very difficult at the time,
But
I would
Michelle,
say.
what was the primary motivation for this move?
So it was for my career. So I was offered a leadership role as a business leader for consumer garments at Gore. So they
Okay.
make the Gore-Tex apparel.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was a great opportunity from a career standpoint to move
Yeah.
up, just to get more awareness and exposure in terms of learning new things and also taking on a global role for the first time too.
Ah,
So
wow.
it was a great opportunity, but it definitely came with challenges. I will say
Yeah.
that.
So, and tell me, first of all, I have to say this is it's an exciting challenge because you are given an opportunity to make a serious leap in your career on one hand, but then on the other hand, you have your family and having two, let's say, teenagers that probably took it the hardest out of the entire family, and explain to them such a motivation. I want to look at it from a perspective of empowerment to women because I think as a role model to them saying, I know I'm your mother, and your wellness is very important to me, your well-being, but I have an opportunity here
Yeah.
to really expand my career in a meaningful way, and this is important too. So, how do you view it in terms of what the message was to your children?
Yeah, I think the message, I mean, it was difficult. I'm not going to say it was super easy. When we first told them, it was very difficult. I think, they were both obviously upset as I would have been too.
Yeah.
Um, and even, the move came with challenges too, and, just trying to figure out how to do things in a new way. But I will say now that, we're 7 years here, and when I look back at where it brought them, it's been amazing to
Wow.
see. Like right away, we got them into sporting events. So rugby is their sport. So we found a private club that they were able to join. And, through that, you would see that their confidence just kept growing and growing and
Wow.
growing. And, they went away to university here. So they've just finished university. They've come home. And it's amazing. Even, my family back home, my mom or my mother-in-law will always say, it was so hard to see you guys go, but it was the best thing for the girls. And I see that, that
Wow.
confidence to start over again and has
Yeah.
just really changed
As a
who they
life
are.
lesson, I think this is one of the strongest presents you could have given them.
Yeah.
And I want to ask, what was your, let's say, your biggest fear before you moved, and did it materialize, or did you find out that it was not reflecting the reality you will meet later on?
Yeah. I think I had a few fears. I mean, first and foremost, you worry about your family and are they going to adjust okay? And,
Yeah.
what's that going to be like? But I also remember at the time thinking, what if we absolutely love it here and I hate my job? What do we do then? Right? Because I was here
Yeah.
working for Gore, and fortunately I can say that wasn't the case. I mean, I was very fortunate with the role that I had at Gore and the people that I met. So that wasn't the case. But I think, for the most part, our fears that we had, we were able to overcome them. I think, it made us stronger, I would say, as a family
As a
too, because
family.
you're all experiencing something together,
Yeah.
which
Tell
is
me, are
pretty
there
cool.
any serious, let's say, cultural differences between Canada and the US as you experienced
Yeah.
them?
Yeah, there's a little bit, I would say. I mean, not a whole lot. It wouldn't be like moving to Europe because there's a lot of similarities in the two
Okay.
countries. I would say right now there's a lot of challenges between the two countries,
Yeah.
which makes it interesting. But yeah, for the most part, it's a pretty easy integration.
So, in terms of looking at your leadership role, okay, so when I look at leadership, the most important thing for us as leaders is our ability to get people aboard on our agenda, on our, let's say, goals, on the mutual goals, and make them work for with us as a group. And did you find any differences in the way you can motivate, let's say, American employees compared to how do you motivate Canadian employees?
I would say there were differences, and I'm not sure if it's because of the different regions or if it's
Okay.
more because of the position and the people around me. And I think I say that because prior to moving to the US, I worked for Adidas for many years. I was there for 17 years, and they
Yeah.
were like a family to me where we all kind of grew up together in this
Yeah.
company. And I feel like there was a lot of when you did move up, there was a lot of celebration for that, right? And a lot of respect for that. And, people would understand your leadership style and they would listen and contribute
Yeah.
in ways. And moving to the US, I will say, was a little bit different because it was starting brand new, right?
Mm,
Not knowing anybody there. Um, and I think, I did learn a lot through that experience where it was then dependent on, okay, what skills do I have to bring
yeah.
people together? And it was more, what I've learned over the past many years is how important listening is. And, getting people to collaborate, you have to listen to them and you have to understand what are their biggest concerns and challenges, and then how do you address it together. So
Definitely.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was just evolving what I had already
Yeah,
learned.
I definitely agree. I think that listening is one of our, let's say, superpower as women. I know there are men who are also great listeners. My partner is one.
Yeah,
But when we look at, let's say, the organizational world, and we see many vice presidents and CEOs that are men, I can say from my experience, especially in Israel, since we have like the military in the background and many of them come from rich military, let's say, service, they also bring a very masculine tone to their leadership, but not in a good way, because the masculine tone can be very positive in terms of, taking risks and aiming high and things that come natural to men. But I've also met throughout my 22 years in the industry many times where the male leaders lacked the listening abilities, and therefore the ability to motivate the team or to get out of the team, to get the most out
yeah.
of the team. I think this is the biggest loss for the organization. When we don't listen, we miss out on so much. So I totally agree with you that listening is a superpower for a leader.
Mhm.
And I'm not surprised that this was your way to, let's say, connect and bring them together and basically turn them into a group that works for mutual goals.
Yeah,
Because I totally see it in a similar way. I
yeah.
was wondering, Michelle, I'm not so familiar with the world of, let's say, marketing and global brands. Is it considered to be like a masculine field of work, or are there many women there in top positions? Can you tell me a bit about how does
Yeah.
gender play a role in marketing?
It's great question. I would say on the marketing side, my experience has been that it's been more the opposite, where you see a lot more females in
Ah,
leadership roles
okay.
on that side. So I would say though in some of the other roles I've been in, the last one that I was in as a business leader for Vortex Apparel, it was the opposite, right?
Mm,
So I marketing has been my focus throughout my career, but as a main role, it's only been the past few years. So prior to
okay.
that, I was working in roles that traditionally have been more male dominated, and not just roles, but industries as well. I came from sporting goods where, when I started there, the entire leadership team was male. And that's kind of how I learned how I entered the workforce, right? So it was a
Yeah.
completely different time than where it is today. But I would say, um, yeah, throughout my career, I've had different areas where,
Yeah.
there has been more females or males.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can say that the experience that you are describing, where we are, let's say, the only women in the room on many occasions,
Mhm.
I think this is an experience almost every woman who has reached a high position can relate to, because we all meet it at some point in our career, and sometimes throughout many years of our career, depending on the, let's say, the field we are operating in. And I want to ask you, when you look at it from your side of the world, from your experiences in the US and your experiences in Canada prior to that, what would you say, let's say, is the biggest obstacle for women? Why aren't there more women next to you in the table when it comes to business leadership?
It's another great question. You've got a lot of great questions today. So I would say, I don't know. this is based on my experience, where maybe there's not more women at the table because it's harder for them to be recognized as strong contributors in the setting. So, for example, in what I've witnessed over the years and over my career is that women would advance more if they had more of an opinion and engaged more as well. And, sometimes that's not always the case, and women aren't always given that opportunity, and sometimes are overlooked and not able to have the seat at the table. That's kind of what I've experienced over the past 20
Yeah,
years.
and I think it's a really interesting point what you're bringing up, because I think it has two sides to it. I think one side is basically the organization itself, the men or lead the organization. They don't always give the women the opportunity to be
Mhm.
heard. And the second part of it, I think it's an internal part for us as women to insist on receiving it, because
Yeah.
you and I both know that in many scenarios we are not given enough time to speak, or we're not given the opportunity. We need to ask for it. We need to insist on it.
Mhm.
We need to demand it. I strongly say demand,
Yeah.
because we will not be given it. We will not be granted this opportunity very easily. Sometimes we will, but on many occasions we will not. So unless we insist, unless we demand, change will not come so easily. So I think if I want to say, let's say I want to convey a message to women who are listening to us, and are maybe at the beginner stage of their careers or middle stage. So I want to say on both of our behalves that unless you mark where you want to reach, and you really put an effort into it, and you demand to be heard, and you look for opportunities to be heard, and you ask for them really strongly, and not don't take no for an answer.
Mhm.
So I think this is the part we have to take the responsibility for. And on the other side, yes, there is also the male participants, let's say, around us, that are not always giving us the opportunity, even if we ask for it
Yeah.
very strongly.
I I completely agree. I had one of my favorite leaders, I guess you could say, um, was a number of years ago, and I'll never forget the advice that he gave me. And he was more than my leader; he was my mentor and helped me in
Yeah.
many different ways. But he said to me, when you get in that group setting, be the first one to talk. He
Mm,
said, be the first one to talk, because then people will recognize that, okay, she has something to say, and we're not going to leave her till the end and then just ask the questions. And I thought that was super interesting because it forced you to get your thoughts out before
yeah.
others,
It's a
right?
really good advice. And I want to say, no, that researchers found that during work meetings, men have the tendency to cut women while they are
Mhm.
speaking three times, 3 times the times that they cut men when they are speaking. So
Wow.
our experience is not something we imagine. We are being disturbed during our time that we take in this meeting room. Yeah, today
We
we
have a
have
guest.
many surprises here today.
Lots
This
of
is not.
animals around.
But it's okay. We love them, so no
Yeah,
problem. So
absolutely.
I think it's important to know these numbers, and I often talk about it in my lectures to women, because sometimes we tend to minimize the biases against us, and we tend to
Hmm.
say no, everything is okay, but not everything is okay. We do find ourselves times and time again in settings where we are not given equal, let's say, equal time or equal treatment like the men
Hmm.
around us get. And this makes the advice you gave you, and also what we discussed earlier, much more important, because we are
Yeah,
not starting from the same place. We are starting
exactly.
always from a lower starting point, and then we have to work much harder
Yeah.
in order to gain this appreciation within the organization. And I want to ask you, Michelle, how do you have you ever had a situation where, let's say, you were, let's say, spoken to in a way that you felt was not giving you the right respect, or giving you, um, um, let's say, suitable recognition or appreciation, and you felt it was because of your gender? Did you have any specific incident that you could relate to your gender?
There's one incident I can remember,
Okay.
and it wasn't directly said to me, but it was said about me. And
About
I
you. Okay.
remember thinking, wow, at the time it was so shocking. And, this again, this was at the very start of my career where I was brand new, trying to figure out the world and where I fit in it. And I remember I was staying late one night just working on something because that's what I did quite
Yeah.
often.
Yeah.
And I the next day my leader came to me and basically said, so and so, I'm not going to repeat the name, but somebody who was in another leadership role,
Yeah.
basically wanted to know why you were here so late and not at home making dinner for your husband.
Wow. No, you really didn't say that.
That is what
Wow.
I had heard, and I thought, oh my gosh, like, and that was 20 years ago or whatever the time frame was, but it's still at that time was so shocking too
Yeah.
that that's what was
I hope
being said.
you asked him if the 50s called and they said they're coming back or something.
Yeah, I should have.
Because
I
it's
should have. Yeah. But it's funny though, because clearly it had an impact on me if I still remember it to this
yeah,
day, because there's been many cases like that.
yeah,
But I have been fortunate too. I don't want to make it sound like, my whole career has been
yeah,
focused like that. Like I said, I had one especially, but I've had a lot of great mentors over the years who have,
yeah,
really given me a male's perspective too, which has been super
yeah.
helpful for me to understand how I should show up in different meetings and settings as well.
Yeah, I think this is a really strong comment because I also try to teach women that there are behaviors that men around us tend to execute and be very good at, and we should learn to do the same.
Hmm.
It works for them and it works very well. And I find it that when it doesn't come natural to us, or it feels a bit,
It's hard.
wow, should I say about why should I promote myself? Why should I tell everyone what I
Hmm.
do? But this is what works within organization. We see it all around us, so we need to learn to do it as well, right?
We do. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle. Even today, it's a struggle. And I'll be in meetings like just a few weeks ago, and it's like, unless I actively promote something that I did, somebody else might take credit for it. And it's so frustrating
Wow.
to me internally because I'm not vocal that way. Like I have to force myself to be vocal that way. And it just doesn't feel natural, but it also doesn't feel great if you're not being recognized for your
Yeah,
accomplishments.
exactly. And I think this is exactly what many women meet. They meet this uncomfortable feeling because it doesn't come natural to us. But we must be more strategic in the way we manage ourselves within the organization. Otherwise, we are taken for granted and we are not chosen for promotion. So everything we see, all the numbers, we see horrific numbers of women at the top management, also in the US and in Israel and globally, we see it. The numbers are terrible in terms of how women are represented. And there
Mhm.
is a reason. There are many reasons, but this is one of them. And I want to convey this message as well to our listeners to say the responsibility is also on us. The responsibility is also on us to to struggle with the parts that are not convenient for us or they are less natural to us and
Yeah.
make the effort because no one
Yeah.
will make it for us, right?
No,
It doesn't
no.
work like this in real life.
In real life, it doesn't, unless you're really, really fortunate. And, I've had some cases where I have been, but yeah.
Michelle,
So
I want to ask you, you've had a wonderful career so far, and you have obviously a wonderful career ahead of you. So tell me, what is like one special big achievement that you're really proud of? And when you look at it, you feel, wow, so consumed with happiness and fulfillment. I'm sure you have many, but choose one just for the sake of
choose
this
one.
conversation.
Um, I would say for me, it's about the people that I've been able to help along the
Okay.
way. It's
Okay.
not necessarily about the accomplishments and, hey, we met our numbers, or, you know, a strategy that I recommended got implemented. But when I see and I think about somebody, a specific experience for somebody who worked for me, and just taking the time to have conversation like we're having
Yeah.
today, right? And the fact that yes, I do feel old sometimes, but I also recognize with that comes the wisdom and the experience of that, and my ability to help that person and see them grow is
Mm.
super rewarding too. So for me, it's, you know, it's beyond the numbers, it's beyond the metrics. It's how are you helping somebody else achieve their
Yeah.
goals?
First of all, it's a beautiful answer, and I really like it. And I have to say that it's kind of a characteristic to women when I ask this question, because I talk to many managers, so I often ask this question, and I find that women tend to see value and to feel very fulfilled from experiences like that, from
Hmm.
seeing someone else grow. And this is something I don't think many men in your position would answer me. I'm sure they would say, I succeeded in bringing this company to X
It's
numbers.
true.
And
Yeah.
so they look at numbers and they look at achievements like in a much different way than us. And I think this is the beauty in bringing women to the table next to the men. And this is also
Hmm.
what the organizations are missing out on when there are not so many women there, because then the perspective is always very limited to numbers and achievements, and I can do that, and my ego and everything. But we bring all the extra value, and this extra value is so meaningful when we look at what keeps employees in our company, what keeps them loyal, what keeps them engaged,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. And it's what makes you successful too.
Yeah,
If the people that you're working with are happy and feel like they're heard and you're mentoring them and they're growing,
yeah.
it's only going to reflect positively on the output too. So it's a win-win situation for
Definitely,
sure.
definitely, definitely. Tell me, Michelle, what are your, let's say, when you look at your future career, how do you see it progress? What are your, let's say, what is your dream going forward?
What is my dream?
Yeah.
Um, I have to say, Shirley, I admire what you're doing. I think the courage that you had to move away from the corporate world and do something that's inspiring and motivating others is where I'd love to go next. I don't know when that is or what that looks like, but something where I can help others based on my experiences where I want to be and where I will be someday.
Yeah, great. So, wow, a wonderful dream, and I think you have so much value to give them and so much wisdom to share. And I can tell you from my experiences since I left the corporate world, the fulfillment that I get when I see transformation in women that I
Mhm.
work with is something that could never be matched to any negotiation that I succeeded in, and or any savings that I could reach as a procurement manager or anything like that. It's not even close. I think that when we are able to help someone else in a meaningful way that changes their lives, it's similar to the example you gave with this employee that you have. So something inside us gets fulfilled, and
Absolutely.
it's a wonderful
You,
feeling. So I really wish that you find the right timing for you to make this shift
thank you.
and go for it, because I really it's a much, let's say, it's a happy way to live, doing
It
something
is
that you
for
are
sure. Yeah,
emotionally connected to. Yeah, great.
absolutely. When you find your purpose, right? And if your
Yeah,
purpose
great.
is helping others, it
Yeah.
works well.
Tell me, Michelle, when you look at the, let's say, the marketing world today and also the business world today, what do you think is the biggest challenge for an organization in order to succeed? Because we see so many powers in place that were not there, even not even 5 years ago. We see political powers, we see many trends that are like rewinding the clock many years back in different aspects, also in gender aspects, but also in other aspects. So, what do you feel is the biggest challenge now? One of
There's
them.
a lot of challenges right now.
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
say, when you look at the industry and all industries, I would say,
yeah,
well, most industries, it's, we live in a very um, unstable, I guess you could say, world right now when you look at
yeah.
everything that's happening around us. And,
Correct.
in our business, we're very dependent on the consumer that's buying apparel.
Yeah,
And that isn't easy right now when, different parts of the world and here in the US, there's changes to the administration and,
yeah,
the concern on some, not everybody, but some people have concerns about spending and are holding back. And I think where I thought you were going to go with this question is more on, what changes do you see happening as well? And, I think about other external influences like AI and the impact that that's going to
correct.
have is going to be positive, but there's going to be a lot of negative that comes with that too, right? And
Yeah, you
it's
think
these things
there are
that we're
negative
still,
effects also?
I
Like
think
what?
so.
What do
I
you
think
think?
so. I mean, I think it's going to change completely how we do things. If,
Yeah,
you're now dependent on artificial intelligence, they can write a whole marketing campaign for you in 2 seconds. What would take you maybe a month,
yeah,
right? So the access to information is going to be so much faster, and it already is. I mean, you see the changes just over the
yeah,
past year to 2 years, and that
yeah.
is pretty incredible.
It's an interesting issue that you brought up with AI because I have to say, first of all, on a personal level, I use AI every day, all
I do
day.
too.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's it's like I just told my partner about a week ago. I told him I'm starting to feel like I'm dependent on it. Like
I know.
I've become so accustomed to reaching out to the AI and working with him, like he's my partner as well. So what happens if it goes away or I feel like it's a true dependency like on ways, we used to navigate
Mhm.
roads ourselves, but now I don't want to navigate without ways, so it's a similar dependency in my
It
in
is.
my
What
experience.
happens if it goes away?
Yeah.
Right? That's the
Yeah.
issue. Yeah.
Yeah, so but I can say that at least from my personal perspective, I think there's a lot to gain, especially as
Mhm.
women,
I
because we
agree.
have a huge opportunity. And I've also dedicated one of my episodes to AI, and I think we have a huge opportunity to let's say overcome some of the gaps we have with men, let's say in the work field, because of AI. If we only learn to use it in a faster way, more efficiently, and also not be afraid of it. And we see that
Yeah,
women are not adopting this technology as fast as men, and not enough, and not in larger scales. And this is if this continues, if these trends continue, I think women
hmm,
are only going to increase the gap. We must be on
I
top of
agree.
that. We must be on top of that. And what you said is correct. Many of the things we used to work on for when I write presentations, I don't like the presentations the AI is writing. I think they're all generic. I don't like it, but I do
Hmm.
interact with him to make
Get
my
the
work
framework.
better. Yeah,
Yeah,
to make it sharper, to make it so. I want him to challenge me. So I think in this respect, it's a good influence.
I agree.
And I think we should all look at it like this. This is we got an enhancer for ourselves. We got a way to enhance our productivity in 30%, 40%, I don't know. So
I completely agree. The productivity standpoint, which would sometimes like I use it for, if I'm writing a script or something, it's much easier to put in, okay, this is what I'm
yeah,
looking for. And you get this amazing thing that would otherwise take me hours to think,
yeah,
oh, is it right? Is it wrong? And then, it's obviously you need to make your adjustments to it and
yeah.
customize it and that. But just the starting point is so much further than me doing it on my own. And,
Yeah, but
and
as
you,
a leader, let's say when you look at working teams, because it does have an influence, and it will have an influence going forward. The influence will only increase in terms of how many employees do we need in a
I
team,
know,
especially let's say in your field. Uh, does it have an influence? And when you calculate how many team members you need per specific region or per specific project, Do you take this AI issue into consideration when you are
Yeah, I
calculating it?
think, I mean, in my current role, you're always thinking about it, right? I would say marketing as a whole, I think is going to be one of the areas that is significantly impacted by this. And, you mentioned just doing presentations, or I
Yeah,
mentioned scripts, or,
yeah,
marketing campaigns. You can do it so much faster through AI
yeah.
than what you would normally outsource or need a team for. So I think it's going to have a massive impact on the marketing industry
Industry
as a
in
whole.
general. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the interesting, I think the interesting part will be to see where it can take us. You know,
Yeah.
what do we still don't know that is even possible? Because I'm sure we will
Yeah.
find out.
Yep.
And I agree. I understand what you said at the beginning about there is a bit of a concern when such a powerful technique is in place, and it's also progressing so rapidly. We are not used to it. And if you look at the history of mankind, we are not used to rapid changes like that.
Hmm.
And I think this is the scary part, that we don't have time to adjust, and we don't
Yeah.
have time
And think
to
about the
understand the current
fallout.
situation, and then it changes again in a week. So already it's
It's true.
yeah.
It's true. And the impact on people, like you
Yeah,
said too, right? Like
yeah.
we don't know where it's going to go.
You know, I heard some research about the US, and they talked about something like, I think it was 60 million Americans or something like that, that were about to, let's say, in the not so long future, have their jobs like become irrelevant to the new,
Hmm.
let's say, work environment because of AI. And they spoke about the serious concern in the US from this technology, from adapting it because of the projections of the meaning
Hmm.
it has to the workplace. Do you find that, let's say, your employees or people that you come across in conventions, do people talk about this concern going forward?
So I haven't had it addressed as a big concern to this point. I think people are still, I think those of us that have adapted to it, like we use it a lot. I think there's still a lot of people out there that don't use it, right? They think, oh, that's something that's down the road, and it might be a few years out, so I'm not going to think about it right now. Where I just think there's that unknown. So I don't see that concern about the impact that it's going to have short
Yeah,
term, which,
yeah.
those of us that understand it and see where it could go, I think we're concerned. But I think a lot of people haven't been openly using it at this point,
Wow.
is my perception.
Yeah, I see it also around me, it kind of makes me feel very uncomfortable, because I feel like there is a train going to the future, and the ones that will not be on the train, I'm not sure how they will be relevant to the
I
world,
agree.
and especially if they're relatively young and they have many years to support themselves and work.
Yeah,
I think it's a big challenge, and I hope they do come around and they do get on the train,
I
because
agree.
we all must be on it. There is no other way, especially as women. Again, I have to say,
Yeah,
we must be there, because otherwise the situation for us will be even worse. We see it
we
every
step
time.
back.
Yeah.
I agree.
Tell me, Michelle, when you look at your, let's say, your leadership throughout the years, what you spoke about listening before as your one of the strengths that you had as a leader. What would you say, let's say, enables you when you look at your life and your childhood and everything? Do you think that your strength as a leader comes more from, let's say, internal strength, that you were brought up in a certain way that enables it, or was it like something you taught yourself through mentors over the years? How do you, let's say, analyze your strengths as a leader? Where are the roots of that? Where do they come from?
I think it's a combination of a few things and things that you learn
Yeah,
over time. I think my work ethic comes from my upbringing. I see, how my parents worked. And I think for me, that feeling of I've got to work hard in order to move ahead was something that um, was instilled in me. And I think, some of my experiences and feeling maybe I haven't been heard has made me realize that, okay, this is something I need to make sure that I'm living, right? If I'm feeling like that, I want to make sure that others aren't. So it's through experiences like
Yeah.
that I think is part of it. But I think part of it too is just who you are, right? And being authentic to who you are. And sometimes you can see that it's forced if
Mhm.
somebody's like, "Oh, tell me how you're feeling," and then, they're on their phone texting somebody. I think
Yeah,
it's,
how are you?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that happens. That does happen. So
True.
I think it's just knowing the self-awareness and knowing your strengths and building off of those, I think is
Yeah.
what's key.
Wow, wonderful. Yeah, it sounds like a wonderful combination. I can see how it gives you all the basis you need for your leadership. Michelle, we are nearing the end of the episode, and I want to ask you, I want you to think about your two lovely daughters who are at the university stage, right? And they're really young, and their whole lives are ahead of them.
Mhm.
And I wanted to give them an advice that is also relevant to other young women who are listening to us in terms of how do they start their journey in this life, in the career, in managing the balance between motherhood and career if they are interested in being mothers. What would be some of your gold advice for them? It's a big question, I know. We
It
can
is a
give them
big
many
question. It's a
advices.
great question. Yeah. And but when I think about my girls specifically and I think about where they're at and they've both graduated and, starting their careers, and I feel like one of the pieces of advice, and there's a lot that I would give them,
Yeah.
is, this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about how I was brought up. Like, you work hard, and because you're working hard, you will advance that way. I almost want to take not the opposite for them, but I want to say it's not all about working hard. It's about the relationships that you make. It's about stuff outside of work, right? You need to have that balance of everything in your life. And, there's times when I look back at my life so far, and yeah, I have regrets. I have regrets that I traveled here for a work thing and should have been home for something else. And I think we all struggle with that as mothers, right? You have those times that you're always going to regret. But that's why I think my advice would be it's okay to be driven and it's great to want to move up, but recognize everything that's around you too and don't take it for granted, because there might be a day when your job is gone, and then, you know, making sure that you have everything outside of that built up as a key important factor is
Yeah, wow. I really love this
important.
advice. I think it's a great one. And I fully agree. I can tell you that I always tell women that I mentor, I tell them we need to be very committed to our work. We need to do our best. We need to make an effort, but we need to be very conscious about the choices we make, about the
Yeah.
sacrifices that we make. Because similar to what you experienced, I have experiences with my oldest child that I missed out on, and I
Hmm.
cannot relive them
Get
now.
that back.
Yeah, I can never get them back. And looking back, it was not the right choice for me. I thought it
Hmm.
was, but as a mother, I would have preferred to be with him back then.
Yeah.
And I think that on one side, I try to be very compassionate also within. And also,
Yeah.
I tell other women we need to be compassionate because we cannot not always make the right choices. But when I have the opportunity to give advice to someone else, I always tell them, look at this choice that you are making from other perspectives, not just
Hmm.
now, not just look at it from a few years in the future. Will you
Yeah.
regret missing out on that or making this choice? And I totally agree. What stays with that are the relationships, like you said, the family that we build, the friendships that we build. Workplaces come and go. We leave them at a
Hmm.
certain time and then we move on, and all is well. This is the nature of the world. but the
Yeah.
family and friends, this is what stays with us. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I love what you said about giving yourself compassion because I remember when my kids were little and having twins. I don't remember a lot about the first year or 2 years of their lives, but I do remember at one point I was so tired. And I just remember thinking I should be playing with them. And I know in the future I'm going to regret that I'm not there playing with them. But I said to myself at the time, remind yourself in the future just how tired you are. Like, give yourself that break and say, you could have played with them, but you were exhausted. And,
Yeah.
giving yourself that compassion and thinking it's okay that I couldn't do it all. It's
Yeah.
okay. You
Yeah.
can't. So
Yeah,
just
definitely. I
accepting
think
it.
this is our life's mission as women in this world, to remind us that all the time we are not superhumans. We
Exactly.
think we have an unlimited capacity to everything around us, but it's not. We are only one person with one body, and we are doing our
Exactly.
best all the time, more than our best. So, yeah,
Exactly.
I think many women can relate to what you just said.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
it's amazing that the experience you just described so well is a universal one. It's
Yeah.
not, it doesn't depend on which country we live in. We all share it. So it's amazing.
Everybody has it.
Yeah,
That's true.
great.
So
Wow,
true.
Michelle, it was such a pleasure talking to you. I'm so glad we
Yes.
decided to
Me
have
too.
this call. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for your time. It was really a
Thank you.
pleasure for me.
Thank you, Shirley. A pleasure for me too.
Great. That's all for today's episode of Natural Born Leaders. I hope you found points of connection, insights, or tools that can assist you in your personal and professional journey. I invite you to share this episode with friends and let me know what resonated with you most or what you'd like to ask or hear about in future episodes. If you'd like to continue the conversation, feel free to visit my website, send me a message, or even suggest yourself for an interview. Together, we'll keep building a strong community of natural born leaders, women supporting one another, growing and succeeding together. Thank you for being here and see you in the next episode.